So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the final, we're multitasking here and changing up systems, but the final webinar in the series for human trafficking prevention and awareness series. And I hope that you are having a great morning so far. And so let's go ahead and get into this. So just a few logistics as we get started. So please mute your mics. And then also, if you will add your name, your ESC, and your district to the chat, so we'll know who's out there, and we can also get you proper accounting. And I want to say thank you for joining us, and hopefully this will be a good refresher. Feel free to ask questions as we go through and as we get into the series. So today we're just going to kind of review the series in whole as we've gone through each piece, and then look at some of the resources that we have provided, and then give a moment for question and answers. And then hopefully, and you have some things that is happening in your districts or your ESCs share out, especially some of you ESCs to share out your program goals and some of your summer offerings. So hopefully those give you an opportunity to do that. Or we have partner agencies on the call that can also do that at that time. And then we'll end with our typical survey and then our wrap up. So just kind of wanted to remind you the purpose of this series. And this was brought to you as a collaborative of our work group. And then we'll get more into what that work group looks like and who's comprised of that, what is that work group comprised of to support the implementation of human trafficking prevention and awareness in our public schools. So really making sure that we have all the tools and things that you may need to support your efforts in those classrooms and those buildings to keep our children safe and remove them from harm or danger. So as you go into this and as you think about next year, think of how can we help you? And as we go into it. So Kelly, do you want to talk about the partners or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I just briefly wanted to let you know, tackling human trafficking is not something that we do alone. Tackling child abuse isn't something that we do alone. We have to do it in partnership and collaboration. And so, and we want to thank you all for the work that you're doing in your local communities with your respective partners on this issue. And so we're working with the governor's office, the child sex trafficking team specifically. We're working with the Texas School Safety Center. We're working with DFPS. We're working with the Title IV School Safety Initiative at Region 14, Rod and Nancy, who've been leading these webinar series for us. The Children's Advocacy Centers of Texas, as we had them present last month. Region 12 are huge champions and leaders in our human trafficking work and work that they're doing within their region to bring folks together, to assess, and to train and equip folks through the asset mapping. And then Crime Stoppers of Houston, and we also heard from them earlier in our webinar series. So these are the folks that we're working with and will continue to work with, and want to continue also to encourage you to continue to partner locally as we continue forward. Thanks, Monica.
And so as we're going into this and why our partners are essential. So as you know, a lot of this traffickers do use your school buildings as a place to recruit our victims. And, some of our victims are a part of that recruitment process. So as we look at how can we help them and then how can we make sure that they are safe, looking at those procedures, and then our our partners in crime in this issue are very essential because they have those mechanisms to support you with training, with resources and other tools beyond the requirements that we have. And then there are adults who recruit on or near your campus. So you're making sure that you see those warning signs, make sure that you're understanding what things may be happening. And then looking at how traffickers text or contact students while they're attending school and how we can control that. And so some of those things you see that you can uplift to us and part of your discussions and our discussions so that we can help build out a better training window and procedures as we go into this. And then they use those different positions, and it's sad to say that there are some educators out there who are part of this process, and really looking at how can we make sure that all of our students are being safe in the school environment, and then also how can we make sure that outside of that school environment they're also safe and have, and bringing in that recruitment and bringing in that prevention and awareness of how do we help, how do we get other more partners into this work so that people who are seeing it are reporting it, who are um, keeping our students out of that realm. And so looking at that. And so making sure that you know what are those policies or the procedures, or updating your policies and procedures on preventing students from being victims of human trafficking. Do you know the law, the rules, the TEKs that are out there that relate to this, and how are we communicating that? And then how are we finding those other partners to do the work in our classrooms, in our buildings, on the buses, or as they are, going to these sporting events. So really thinking about what is the whole gamut? How do we get our parents into being also safeguards for this work? And so for the 2021 series, we've looked at unpacking the requirements. We've done a 101 on human trafficking. We've had Nick Mick talk about internet safety. We've had a panel discussion talking about the trauma of trafficking. Then we had Crime Stoppers coming back in, talking about some of their training opportunities and the reporting process. And then our own TEA with our educator investigations, talking about that investigative process. And then we had 2 sessions actually on asset mapping, and how does that look for you in your close in area, really looking at who are your partners, who are those helps in your systems. And then finally looking at the Children's Advocacy Centers of Texas, and really looking at how they are that frontline center of help for a student who has been victimized, and making sure that all of the pieces are related and working together. So as we go into the next series, really looking at what does it mean? Well, so our first one was unpacking the commissioner's rules, which was at the very beginning, I want to say in September. So and we also will be sharing the link for this and for this PowerPoint today, but all of those are posted. The presentations are there and also on YouTube. And then, as you know, Rod and Nancy have been marvelous with providing you with, as we go through these trainings, the different links that we put in during the conversations. And so you will see the checklist here. As you know, we rolled that out earlier this year. Our TEA, we've had 2 go out. The Gateway training, Protect Texas, still is a viable option, just knowing that that free window is over, but it's still a viable option for you. And then we have NetSmart's kids, and then looking at how to report missing kids and going from there. And then I want to say December, yes, was our human trafficking 101 with Kelly Kravitz and Debly Scholler from the Office of the Governor. And they presented on just the basics of what are we talking about when we talk about human trafficking here in the state, as it relates to serving our students in the education system and our Texas schools. And so really, what does it mean for a student to be exploited? What is the difference between sexually exploited and then also being commercially exploited for work? So you got to remember, it's not just sex, it's also work. And then also looking at the CAC map, the Gateway training, also our prevention and awareness toolkit and those resources. So if you go to tell posters that are out there, and then we introduced our Qualtrics survey so that you can start, so we can get some background and info on how well are we serving you and providing you with information. Then we went into asset mapping. And as I said, we had 2 sessions on this. And so basically with the asset mapping, that's really looking at you as looking at either your district or your ESC, or your ESC and your district, really looking at who are those partners that you can work with to support your students, from the Office of the Governor's liaisons who are out there in your areas, to going really into those specific partners such as Love 146, Protect Texas, also the Cyber Tip Line, also your CACs that are in your area, And then who in your DPS, if there's a Pacific processing or if there's Crime Stoppers. So really looking at who in your area is your partners to have resources to provide training, to provide assistance to your students, or to provide parent training or other opportunities for you to look into supporting our students. And then the next one was our NCMEC training, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And this one was predominantly about internet safety. So really knowing what is happening with those students, watching what they're reporting, how they're interacting on the websites and on those different sources out there, and really bringing that awareness to another level for us. So how do you find a cyber tip line, and how do you look at those, how do you get rid of explicit images? How do you watch your children's or your students' emails, mails? What are some of those warning signs that you can look for about those things? So you'll see the tips on how to do that. Also what should you do to ask for training, since they do have provided training. And then also it was announced at our December 7th, 17th, to the administrator address letter, which brought out a lot of information on our human awareness training and requirements and our mandatory reporting reminders. So really this brought out the requirements for our superintendent, our board of trustees, and our educators, and being specific on the training opportunities, and then how to become a registered trainer or an approved or authorized trainer, because there's a little bit of difference in those nuances depending on who you're presenting to. And then so also looking at some of the ways that you can access our previous trainings. And so as you know, they're housed on two places. They are housed on our webinar series webpage, and then the videos are housed on our YouTube page also. So you have two ways that you can access any of our information as we go forward. And I see no questions in the chat, so I'm gonna keep moving. Yeah, Kelly put the link excuse me, put the link in the chat for our previous webinars and our videos. And then in January, as we looked at or reviewed our human trafficking panel on the trauma of trafficking, and really had a good conversation with two young ladies who discussed the trauma out there that is associated with that, and really looking at, so these are the websites that you can look at, pull up for yourself to review, and then how we can help those students, and then really looking at some of the case studies and some of the other materials that we can bring into those conversations, and then how do we support those students after the fact. So we did show a marvelous video on just kind of bringing it down to a simple level of what is human trafficking, so that you can use. It's still available out there. And then also looking at the paradigm of what's wrong with you to what happened to you, really looking at us having that discussion of and being very whole child centered, and not looking at this is something that they did not choose to do themselves. So you got to think, what is happening to that kid? Really changing our own mindsets and how we approach them and how we serve them. So really looking at what is, we're not blame placing. We're not making that they have their own issues, but really support them. Really walking in and how do we support this kid to get them to the next position in their life, and to make them understand that they're not wrong. It's an issue that happened to them that they have survived, and then how can we help them go to the next level? So really being putting that compassion into the work of this that is very traumatic for all. So one of the resources that we shared also during this time was the grief-informed and trauma-informed practices. So as you know, we have a mental health and behavioral unit here. And this is one of the web pages on our TA website that will allow you to find some other resources on really just how to help students who have been experiencing different levels of trauma. And so really thinking about how can we be that supportive background for our students and really going into helping them grow. And sometimes even some of these trauma-informed practices will help us as we move into the next issue or next point. So want to also remind you that we have our Project Restore, which is a training series on trauma-informed training. And so it is a whole webinar series that you can use. It does also have lessons to go with it. So you can use this as a real training tool to really get into looking at how do you serve students, how do you help, but then also how do you help yourself to be that confident adult in the room as you go. If you're not in the right mind space, how can you help someone else? So really thinking about how do we get to that next level? And so Project Restore is a great website to go visit, to use, and to also just, kind of bring your own calming mindfulness activities into place. So hopefully hope everyone's looked at it, checked it out. If not, hopefully you're using it. And then Crime Stoppers is our next training that we had. And Crime Stoppers really talked about their training opportunities and their reporting process. And so, they are very prominent in Houston. So you will see their website, their resources, but they do have a tip line and some other information, and you can find all of they are expanding. So their number will actually connect you to the right spot. And so, or refer you over. So just don't think if you report it here, it's going to stop there, or you only have to be in Houston. It just might take a little bit more to get it to the right location. But just really, Crime Stoppers has a great system, great process. And so they have training tools and resources. And it's, most everyone knows Crime Stoppers for looking for those criminals, but we're really looking at also how do we prevent? So they're also talking about prevention and awareness and keeping our students safe. So as I mentioned earlier, their tip line, so it is open 24/7. They usually receive about 2,500 calls per month. They are staffed by investigators. So that's one other thing you have to think about with Crime Stoppers. They are really staffed by law enforcement, and then who are going to go into that next level of investigation. So you see the tip line number there. So that is another number that you can share or put out and really look at how you're helping your students, especially for those who are down in the Harris County community. And then the next one, we had a great, and I think I am probably going over, but TA reporting and investigating an educator misconduct. With this one, we really had a great session with David Rodriguez from TEA, who talked about educator investigations, educator misconduct, and the different things on how they do their reporting, how do they do their investigations, how all of them are pretty much RD trained legal investigators. And so also the do not hire registry, the fingerprinting process, and then the superintendent requirements. So all of that is based and housed on the website and that presentation. And if you have questions, their contact information was there, but you can also reach out to us. And I believe this is Nancy's slide. Nancy? You might be muted.
Asset, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. So asset mapping was our Region 12's put together the asset maps that showed us their asset maps that they had produced, and also the ones that some templates that districts can use to implement their own asset mapping project. Asset mapping is a tool that leads to mobilizing and sustaining positive changes in a district by letting you look at where are your strengths and where there may be deficiencies, and addressing student needs, including physical and mental health. So this, what we've provided here for you is the presentation from that link. And this can be done with ESCs and with LEAs. So this is not just, it's not a one and done kind of thing. It's continuously looking at what what resources are out there for you. In the presentation was covered the Office of the Governor's website, the NCMEC's website, also the cyber tip line, more information on Protect Texas and what they can do for school board and educator training, and some student programs out there, because also mandated is that we are making our students aware of human trafficking and what some signs of that are. So there's an ESC 12 also provided an interview guide and how you can talk to those community resources and do a baseline survey. So ESC 12 has done a lot of work and is willing to discuss with you if you have questions, but I encourage you to reach out to your ESCs, as they've all been trained. Their school safety consultants have been trained in how to do asset mapping.
Thank you, Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So our next one and our last one, which was a great session, hopefully you caught that, May 14th, was the Children's Advocacy Centers of Texas, and Luis Acuna Pilgrim, and he did a great job on talking about what their assets are with the Children's Advocacy Center, their website, going over their provide grooming research paper, also looking at those definitions, and then really talking about the prevention and awareness, and really getting into those different pieces of it, and then how they support a student and walk through that process. What are they doing, the reporting process, how they are an intake center, how they're watching and protecting that child as they go through, recovery of once it's been reported, and getting into the next level and their support there. And then as we go into this, so yes, I saw Stephen's question into the chat. Yes, we are going to provide a copy of the presentation today. I just couldn't load it, but we will be getting it to everyone today. So yes.
I just dropped it in the chat.
Marvelous. Thank you, Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
But Nancy and Rod are also great with following up with those tools with their follow-up emails. So also watch it for there. But as Nancy said, she put it out there in the chat. All right, I think this one is yours, Nancy.
Okay, so some resources out there for ESCs and LEAs are the Human Trafficking Gateway module. So the Gateway provides training for for educators and for school board. They meet the needs of both of those parties. Human trafficking checklist was created and I highly recommend that districts use this to go through and make sure that you're meeting all the mandates that are required in each of those groups: superintendents, school boards, and educators. We also created this human trafficking short sheet, which then looks at those training requirements, tells you what has to be included in a training, and then provides you some, it's not an exhaustive list, but a list of several entities that or trainings that are out there that meet those needs. And so the checklist is everything you need to be doing, and then the short sheet is the training and who can provide some of those trainings for you. There's also TAAs that have gone out that you may want to look at to see the latest guidance from TEA on those things. Mandatory reporting for teachers, reminder that teachers have to report, or all educators have to report within 48 hours. And then there are some toolkits that are out there to assist you in that. So those are some resources out there. We're also working on a flyer that will go out just to remind districts of things coming up in the fall as you get new teachers in, hire new staff, that those teachers have to be trained as well. So we'll have that information for you in that flyer. Okay, I think,
Kelly Arby. But I'll start it out. So as I stated earlier, we provided two to the administrator address letters. One was in September. That was really more on the data requirements and then the safe and supportive schools, and really looking at the law and the requirements as we just came out of some Senate Bill 11 requirements, and then looking at that. But then the one that probably really delved into looking at human trafficking and prevention was the December 17th newsletter, really going into more of the guidelines. The checklist was highlighted for your school board members, your superintendents, and your commissioner rules. And then some other updates were in that document also. So really looking at that is more of your intents, getting into further guidance and really looking at those requirements and those reporting requirements that was provided in that to the administrator address. Did I miss anything, Kelly?
No, I'll just double down on what you shared. I think it's really important that that December TAA is still very much relevant. Everything in there really clarifies what the expectations are. And I think the biggest change that you'll see with our policy, our child abuse policy, includes human trafficking. And so that is what was significant about that policy change, and that communication going out across the state to let folks know that as a part of child abuse and mandatory reporting, you're also required to integrate human trafficking. And then out of the 86th legislative session, there was different training requirements for superintendents, school board of trustee members, as well as educators, and where to go for that training and what were those specific training requirements. And that was also included. And then, as Monica had mentioned and Nancy had mentioned on our TEA resources slide, our Children's Advocacy Center Child Abuse Prevention Toolkit, where we have an online safety tool amidst COVID, as well as updated child abuse and neglect reporting posters that are supposed to be in English and Spanish at student eye level on every campus, as well as some other resources, a new guide for administrators and guides also for educators in both English and Spanish. Those resources are all linked and included there. Also, the checklist that Nancy mentioned is included there. So it's a really, really great kind of one-stop shop for all things kind of human trafficking, child abuse prevention, really clarifying. And I would say is, like I said, just still very much relevant as you plan for this school year, communicating within your district what the requirements are. And just wanted to make sure that you all know about that and could use it as you plan also for this upcoming year. Thank you, Monica.
All right. So the next item we want to highlight is those actual checklists and the short sheet. So we came out with the human trafficking checklist earlier. So really it is, and I saw someone put it in the chat, it helped you really just know what to put up, what to be posting on your campuses, what are those laws, if you need to report abuse, how do you do that? What is that protocol? And then really thinking about how does that affect your campus or your district protocols, on reporting and how does you make sure that happens. And then those handbooks, what should be in that handbook and those other resources there. So really looking at how do you do that, and then those required trainings. And then the short sheet also went into those training options and those opportunities and what needed to be a part of that training. As you look at either district in-house or district using your ESCs or some of your other vendors, what training should be there, what should happen, who does it apply to when we think about the law and the rule, really being down and into the nitty gritty of this is what has to be a part of it. It has to be a part of the concept and part of the rule, what needs to be covered so that you are meeting the letter of the law, because we all want to make sure that we are meeting the letter of the law. And then some of those programs for supporting our students who have been victimized or to actually prevent them from being a victim. So really thinking about, we try to give you as much in these two documents that will help you to support your schools and get forward into the next processing. And the next is the Texas Gateway module. And with the Gateway module, hopefully that you're using this as a resource and as a tool. It is open, it has 11 units, about an hour completion time as you go through it. And they're really using it as a coordination with your with existing child abuse. So you have to add on a piece to cover child abuse for your mandatory reporting, but this will cover your human trafficking prevention and awareness piece of that of training. So just remember, you got to add a piece to it. So you can collaborate with others. It is free. There is no login required. And if you scroll to the very bottom of that page, you will see at the very bottom the option that you can actually, if you as a district want to add that cartridge, this program into your own system so that you can get certificates out, you may do that. And so really looking at this is a viable tool for you. We will be updating this to add on a child abuse prevention part of the training. So it will be a one-stop shop. So be looking forward for that. But currently right now, this is a piece to the whole. I will put it that way. All right. So over the last couple of months, we've been working on just some reminders and some reporting and training tips for you for the upcoming year. So in the next mail out that Rod or Nancy, and also on our TA website, we will have this flyer up and ready for you. Hopefully maybe by the end of today, but definitely next week, where you will find just some tips, some little things to remember as we go back into school or over the summer. Really, reporting, how to report, our different websites that we have available where you can find those tools, those different pieces, and then just a few providers that you might want to visit to think about, and then going into that. And so hopefully you will find that beneficial, and then as we go into our next school year. All right, Nancy.
Another thing I wanted to share just with that flyer is please, when it drops, please share it with your networks. This is an excellent resource. It's a high-level one-pager. It looks excellent. It's we worked really closely with our marketing and communications team, as well as with our child aged trafficking work group. And it truly is, here's the reminders, here's the information, this is important, everybody must be trained, here's the minimum requirements. And so we need to increase awareness across the board, across the state. I would say humbly that there's a lack of understanding of what the expectations are and what the training requirements are. And so we want to make sure that we're promoting this. And if you guys can partner with us in that and make sure that you're widely communicating this in your district community, sharing it with your colleagues, asking your leaders, what are we doing? What training are we providing? When is it happening? How are we having dialogue and conversation around this? How are we addressing virtual and remote learning and the new circumstances that we're in because of COVID and at-risk factors in our families' lives? And just help us with championing and echoing and getting this conversation as we prepare for the next school year. Also, the tool is essentially, we're launching it now for the new year, but it will be available year round. And we really do see it as a marketing piece that stakeholders can use, ESCs can use, you all within the schools can use to really remind people at a high level about what the requirements are and where to go for the information. So thank you.
Okay, so on the TEA Child Abuse Prevention webpage, we mentioned earlier how human trafficking has been added into that definition of child abuse. So this really has that overview. And we're often asked, where in law does it say that I have to do this and this? This is where the Texas Education Code is really broken down to tell you all those places where you can find information on what districts have to do. So you'll see Texas Education Code 38 and all the different subsections of that talk about where you have to post it, what type of training is required. So you have all of that on that web page, and includes reporting mandates and policy resources, so districts can look at TASB code, family code, and administrative code on that website.
Thank you, Nancy.
Mhm.
All right. And so another website, you will find with our partnership with the Children Advocacy Center, came up with a child abuse prevention toolkit. So you will find one of the reporting process, you will find the reminders and tips. You will find the school age posters, the banners, administrator guides, how to report it in a virtual setting. So you will see a lot of resources and tools that you may use in your districts to support this effort of preventing human trafficking on our campuses. So really thinking about, this is a one-stop, a great stop place to grab something, to find different pieces when you're really looking at child abuse, neglect, or human trafficking. So our other page is our prevention and awareness of child abuse, neglect, and including trafficking of school, that toolkit. So that's also going into that. So it's really looking at another way of looking at that. So you will also see that no go tell poster is there, and then further guidance for those different pieces. And so as we move and build, you will see these different websites and different materials that you may want to grab. And here's a close-up of those posters for your campuses. Remember, they are to be placed in multiple places and at eye level. And so you got to think, is it also, when you're really thinking about it, as student eye level, not just adult, but student eye level also. So really thinking about, how do you tell it? How do you go make that reporting process? So they are to be posted on 11x17 posters. So they are very easy to print and go forward, and then really looking at those as you go in. So thinking about those high traffics, especially now that we're going back into our buildings, really make sure that these are up and we're ready for you to review. And then the final one is our human trafficking of school-aged children. And then this is where you will find different information. And as we get ready to go into our question and answer phase, these pages also will be updated over the summer. We're going to finish up with some of those. And so if you have any thoughts, wonderings, or suggestions, you will see also on the screen our preventing human trafficking website. Email. So if you would email us your comments, your concerns, or your suggestions, I will highly appreciate it. That will help us to really make sure that we are really looking at how do we support you and then do a few, as we do some cleanup and then updates and of the website. So that leads us to questions and answers. So if you got some questions out there, feel free to either raise your hand, or if you want, you can unmute or put it in the chat. I see that some have been asking for some of the links to their websites, and really putting it out there for us. So thank you for, I see Joe and Kelly have been putting out our website information. So are there any questions out there?
No question is a silly question. We know that this work is highly nuanced. It's complicated. It's been hard to find on TEA's webpage. So please do know that we welcome any and all questions without any judgment.
I have a question. I was trying to find some resources. So I have seen an increased number of our students being recruited for trafficking, like going down to the border, driving, and they're not aware. So I met with some of us students who were recruited, and we're trying to come up with some awareness posters that they can help create, because they feel like if they would have known ahead of time, they didn't really realize that that is human trafficking, and how they just thought, hey, we just have to drive and we're getting paid a lot of money. But I'm wondering, do you have any resources for that, like awareness posters for that? They're being recruited through social media. I saw also an article in the news about it. So I'm just wondering if there's any resources for that.
That is a great question. Off the top, I'm not aware of a specific poster for that purpose, but the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has a number of very high quality resources, as well as the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And so we will reach back out to our partners and see if there are some posters available. I have a hunch that within the resource links that we've shared, there's likely some organizations that have put together something for this purpose, but I'm not aware of off the top what it is. DFPS may also have something that's specifically targeted at trafficking. So we'll definitely check into that. And Norma, can you please send us your email, because we'll follow up with you specifically with that information. Thank you so much for communicating with these students about this. Have local law enforcement been brought in to this conversation, Norma? Yeah,
they were my first to go, and they feel so very concerned because we know the cartels are involved. So it's the way you approach it. And I know our law enforcement is working with the Dallas law enforcement to figure out the plan, but I've had 5 youth recruited for this that are currently in school, but there's more that had already graduated. So, I'm just trying to work with our youth to create some awareness, like how can they warn their friends as navigating through the juvenile justice system and serious fines. So, so I'll put my email, any information would be greatly appreciated.
That's great. And I'm seeing a couple other people saying, yes, please send it to us as well. So this will be a next step for us following this meeting, is to track down potentially some posters or resources, see what's available, and then we'll just go ahead and mass blast that to everybody who's in attendance today. And I'm so grateful that you referenced this scenario that you're living and experiencing, and thank you for sharing that.
I noticed there is a comment from Sylvia Garza regarding how to present child abuse prevention, human trafficking. You asked if districts decide, and the answer to that is a district decision how that goes out, but the requirements have to be met. So that's what that checklist is good for, is to look at those requirements that are out there, but then how those are presented. Now we've provided you those resources that are trainings out there that do meet the needs, but how that comes out from the district is a district decision. So. I wanted to comment, Norma, thank you for sharing that, because many times, as trying to create these resources, we're one step removed from you who are actually dealing with those students. So hearing exactly, what's going on and thinking about driving for others, that's not something that was on forefront of my mind, but absolutely, there's movies made about that. So
Yeah. Yeah,
hearing,
and I noticed a pattern, like a lot of the youth, because I'm the homeless and foster care liaison, it's usually my unaccompanied homeless youth that are being recruited
yes,
for very low socioeconomic status. So there's an, they have a need for money, so they're easily attracted, and and so some of them would call me from the border, like, Miss Mercado, come pick me up. I'm like, what? And that's how I found out, because they were reaching out to me, and it's just very sad to see that now they have to be involved in the justice system, and because they were not really, didn't know what was really the reality of what was going on.
I think that's a really important note that you made about those different populations that are vulnerable. And Debbie Solcher mentioned that in her webinar series, where she went through those different populations. Our students with significant cognitive disabilities are at risk, foster care, homeless, so there's actually a list in that presentation of those populations to really tune into that could be at risk. So thank you again for sharing, Norma.
Right. Before we move to the next agenda item, are there any other questions or wonderings?
Karen, thank you so much for your feedback. Just that your district was able to provide training on child abuse and human trafficking, and that our information was helpful to you, the short sheet, the checklist, the posters in English and Spanish. That's excellent for us to have that feedback. I'm so glad that those resources were helpful to you. It's really good to hear.
And I see where someone mentioned, could it be provided in other languages as well? So that's something I'm thinking maybe that we can look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Possibility.
And potentially sharing with us which languages would be most pertinent, or I don't know if that's the right word, but like which other languages would we like to see those posters translated into?
Got it. All right. Thank you. All right. So as we move to the next item, this is actually an opportunity for you to share out. And then I see a question before I go. Does TA require district provide proof that trainings are being done? Currently at this time, no, they are not required to report back to the agency that your trainings are being done. Now, there is training documentation locally that you're probably having to do, but you do not have to report that back to the agency at this time. You never know, with law and legislation, things may change, but currently at this time, no. Steve, most of our stuff is in English, Spanish, but I will make sure that we get some other things also. But especially our student-facing documents are available in English and Spanish. So is there a district that you want to step out, share, or an ESC that want to talk about any of their summer trainings or options that they're providing this summer? So this is an opportunity to share out, to talk about what you're doing before we wrap this up for the year. Or even a partner agency that would like to talk about something that they may have going on. Or you can put it in the chat.
This is Michelle Butler. I'm at Region 12 in Waco.
Hi, Michelle.
I have a training. It's coming up this Monday and Tuesday, and it's for school nurses mainly, but it can actually be watched virtually also. And there are 3 hours total. There's child abuse, physical, child abuse, sexual, and then we have an hour also of human trafficking in those 2 days. So it's going to be a powerful conference. So thanks for asking.
Thank you. So Michelle, can you put the link in the in the chat?
Just going to do that. Yes.
Thank you. Marvelous. Any other ESCs out there that want to share?
I was gonna say thank you for the opportunity to share, and thank you, Kelly, for staying on top of all my comments. I really appreciate you and Monica taking the time out to give us this information. In our district, that's the same thing. We're offering some trainings in terms of, we're looking at the suicide prevention. Y'all saw my clip about that, suicide prevention, trauma-informed care, substance abuse, looking at prevention and intervention, and of course the human trafficking and child abuse. So we are setting up online trainings. We're planning for 2 worlds. We're planning for the virtual world as well as face-to-face. So we're doing, we've created PowerPoints with some voiceovers, and we've utilized a lot of the resources that's been provided by TEA. The trauma-informed care piece, we've taken the 6 series videos that y'all have shared with us and broken them down into segments. So we're chunking in at staff and asking staff to complete 1 video per month, starting in the summertime, so we can get them ahead. Because one of the things that we're fully aware of is our children are living through trauma right now. Staff is living through trauma, and we want to make sure that we're addressing the trauma and the grief that we're going to see as students and staff return to schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen, I love that you're connecting all of those pieces and really bringing it together. That is what our highly mobile and at-risk division is as well. And just helping people to see all the interconnected links and making those connections. That's just awesome.
Thank you.
Who else would like to share? Don't forget, you can also put it in the chat. And then as we go in, so thank you for those who have put it in the chat.
It looks like, thank you, Nilda, for dropping in the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and they have a printable flyer in 23 languages. Awesome, and wallet-sized in English and Spanish. So there you go. Let's look at that resource. Thank you so much for dropping that into the chat. Oh, that's excellent, excellent, excellent information.
And as you know, we like to get your feedback, and thank you to those who have been providing feedback. We do look at it. I've been watching your feedback and know that there's a need for this, and then that there is also a need for maybe a little bit more. But looking at their times and efforts, and so really, hopefully, as we go forth into this, that you take the time and the opportunity. I'm going to drop it in the chat also, the link to the Qualtrics survey. So thank you for that. And then did not put it in this one, but this one is just on today. But there was also one for the entire series. And so really looking at how do we step this up for next year for you, so that you can find, continue to be a benefit to you as we go forward. And then finally, as we go into, if you ever need to reach out, these are our pretty much of the team, our websites, our emails, and then the Preventing Human Trafficking website email is also listed on this slide. So feel free to take a screenshot, or that you have the presentation, but email us if you have questions, wonderings, just needs a little bit more, and then we can a beginner, and intermediate, and an advanced set of training. Okay, we can consider it. All right.
Is there anything else from a TEA perspective that we could do as far as our messaging that would help to strengthen and drive awareness around this, help you all in ensuring that this word and is messaged in your district appropriately? I know we have the TAA, we're working on these resources, but I'm wondering if there's anything else that would help to strengthen this and support you all in carrying this message forward. Well, if you think of anything, please don't hesitate to email us, because we want to steward our platform and our opportunity at TEA well, and want to support you all in that messaging and making sure the right people are hearing about it, and that you have that backup and support as well.
If you need a spokesperson to validate that y'all are doing a great job, I'm your girl. We
Okay.
really appreciate you.
Karen, I might just put you on dial-up.
Thank y'all so much. This is wonderful.
You're welcome. All right. So I see that, I hear, we do actually have a meeting for our liaisons for human trafficking, and that has been compiled and updating. So yes, we can make sure that it's done. So I saw that in the chat. All right, so thank you. It's 2 minutes till. So thank you for everyone that showed up today. We appreciate your comments and your questions and your input. As Kelly said, if there's anything else that you may need, please do let us know. You have our emails, you know how to reach us, and if not, and then it's happy Friday. Have a great weekend, everyone. And then hopefully you get to enjoy your summer break a little bit. We're going to be on, so we'll be here if you need us. So thank you and have a good one.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
So much.